What's up, YouTubers? It's Chazra, aka Montana Chill. Today, we are going to talk about program EQs. Many of you know that as the Pultec EQ, which, by the way, for those of you who didn't know, as I did not know, the original company name is Pulse Techniques Incorporated EQ. And that is the EQP1A emulators. There's a lot of them out there. So today I'm going to talk about what is a program EQ, how do you use a program EQ, when to use a program EQ, and then I'm going to try to visually represent some of the nuances of that, although it's actually quite difficult to explain. And as I get into this, you'll understand why. So today, there is quite a few plugins out there available. Today, we're going to talk about the Kavasa EV MP5 or EV3 MP5. That's what it is. Is that right? Is it EVE or EV3? It's a weird logo. Anyways, and then we're also going to talk about Igniting Amps, PTEQ-X, and the Pultec, all of which are modeled after the Pultec EQ, the original EQP1A. So, before I talk about this, I wanted to give a little bit of history. This compressor is a studio staple, and there's a very good reason for that. It is singularly the most musical EQ in your mixing toolbox. It is a must-have in your kit, and it will teach you and force you to approach mixing, specifically bus mixing and master mixing, a little bit differently. And so I'm not going to get too into the weeds in terms of the technical under the hood technology here, because I don't think that would to help us learn here. But I'm going to start by talking about what originally this EQ was designed for, and then get it a little bit into what it's actually used for today. So if you'll notice the manual here, you'll notice that originally this was a broadcast EQ meant to accentuate and highlight, basically roll off highs and lows, frequencies that were less used in AM frequencies, and give a little bit more peak and boost to help things cut through a mid-heavy mix, basically. Because of that, and I'll kind of utilize the Pultec here. There's boost and attenuation. Attenuation is cut. So there's two options of boosting and cutting. And in fact, when you look at the instruction manual, it's interesting because it specifically says select switch determines the curve on which the left hand boost and attenuation controls are effective. Either the boost control or the attenuate control should be operated as required. Do not attempt to boost and attenuate simultaneously on the low frequencies. Specifically says that. However, everybody does because it has a unique effect on the mix. So first of all, this is when we talk about program EQ. Program, the word was originally intended to, when we say program, we're talking about a broadcast program. So it is a overall mix EQ. Now, however, it is great on things like that have a wide bandwidth usage, like guitars, drum mixes, choruses, things like that, or your master mix mastering, which is typically where I use my program EQs, is in my mastering suite. So because of that, here's the one thing we need to say about program EQ. If we were to talk about like channel EQ or DAW EQs, we could visually represent what's happening. We can't do that with program EQs very easily. And the reason is because it's a hack. The way the engineers learned to use the attenuate and the boost at the same time within your mix is a hack. It was never designed to be used that way. However, it has some beautiful and powerful unintended consequences. And there was a great article that I found online. I encourage you guys to read that by Jari Naemi. Pultec EQ Explained. If you Google that, Pultec EQ Explained, it sort of accentuates, and I was going to go buy the app to do this same thing and show you guys, but I thought, you know why? This guy's got this, and it really highlights this wonderfully. And that is that if you use a boost, it's first of all, it's a shelf EQ on the top and the low both. But if you attenuate or cut that same frequency, the same band, what it actually does, it's not actually the same band. It's shifted, and it will create a dip, as you see here on these frequency response graphs. So here you see at, I think it's like 20 hertz or whatever, and then it's boosted 4 dB at 20 and cut at 20, but the cut is all the way over at like 200. So if we were to look at our EQ, let me pull this back up here. I'll try to, this is not what actually happens, but I'll just try to demonstrate what is sort of happening. It would be more akin to this. You end up with something naturally of this, and it's a sweeping EQ, and they're sort of parameterized together, if that makes any sense. So could you kind of emulate what you're doing with the program EQ here? With normal, maybe it's like a 7-band EQ. Yeah, you maybe could do that. But here's the thing. Your program EQs are extremely musical, and that's the point, is to use your ears, engineer sound. And it's less about physically what the tool is doing, and it's more about what you're hearing. And what we find in modern mixed music is that, in fact, when we accent a high, when we accent a low, we typically do end up immediately following that, pulling down just before or just after those EQs with a band EQ to get that natural dip. And what's neat about the program EQs is they do that automatically. They naturally do that because of the way the technology is designed. So I'm going to go through, we're going to listen to what this is doing. And I'm going to start with the Pultec. And here's a little hip hop track. And let's see what happens. You hear that nice low end. And let's listen to the program EQ on that. Somehow I'm overdriving that, which is interesting. There we go. There it is without. And just for argument's sake, let's go ahead and reset the device, okay? And then we'll start from scratch just to try to build this so we can listen to what's happening, okay? So here we've got, I guess I'm overdriving it a little bit. I'm going to back that off a little bit. There we go. So we got a nice shelf low end. Okay, that's where we're starting. Nice shelf low end, and we're going to back that up to 30. So now we're just getting the subs. That's pretty nice. Now let's attenuate that. Hear that muddiness drop out of there? There it is without the attenuation. So let's go with 5. Let's widen the band. The bandwidth is going to take it from peak to, and you can see that in the original documentation. We can see here, you could build this freaking thing if you wanted to. You can see the difference in attenuation here in these graphs, these plots, frequency plots. All right, let's do the same thing on the high end. So let's go ahead and boost. Let's boost it pretty high, around 8. Oh, you can hear that real quick. And let's change the frequency to 10K. Yep. Let's pull that back. add a little bit of noise in there. Let's back that up a little bit. All right, now let's listen to it without. That's pretty nice. There's 60. There's 30. All right, so you can see what happened there. Like it's kind of like you're applying all these different bands by cutting and attenuating on the same frequency band. It's just the science behind it is rather relative. I mean, I searched on this pretty good. Other than Jari's notes here, I mean, I just don't see a lot of research on the exact minutia of frequency response of your Pultec style EQs. But I thought it was a good start. And I want to emphasize here the critical thing is using your ears and engineering sound. So that was the Pultec. So really nice. I'm going to bypass that. So the next one I want to look at is the Ignite Amps PTEQX. You can totally tell a modeled difference here. The Waves is clearly a better plugin. Having said that, the Ignite Amps is a free plugin, and it's usable. So let's kind of listen to the difference here. Same settings. Relative settings. 4, 5, 6-ish. I think it sounds closer when I go to 7 here. And then a little, same thing with the high end, the boost. So it's not as exact as the Pultec, but still a great plugin. You get high and low pass. You get your high and low pass filters here as well, and then you you also get your mid-level dip EQ, which is sort of a different discussion, however, because we're just looking at the mid EQ, just a program EQ. So I think it sounds pretty good. It's definitely usable. It's definitely the same concept. It will teach you to be musical about your EQ using your ears rather than your eyes. And I mean, because that's the real beef, right? With, using this is we tend to use our eyes. We look at the analyzer tool. And we tend to be like, oh, I got, I don't have enough low here, or I got too much low. And we're looking at sound, we're looking at a plot, of these frequencies, and we're trying to do things with that. And I'm not going to say that's bad always, but I am going to say, especially if you're trying to identify problem frequencies, but we want to get back to using our ears, right? So cool, good stuff. So let's bypass that one. Let's look at the Kavasa. Same thing on this one, in my opinion. It sounds digital, honestly, if I'm honest about it. I mean, it sounds good, and I've used the Kavasa on a lot of mixes. This is typically, before I had purchased the Pultec, this was what I used. And it gets the job done. So if you have this, use it, make use of it. And you'll also note that the bottom row is the program EQ and the top row is your mid EQ, which I do have that, the MEQ5 Pultec. I don't use it all that often, to be honest. So where would you use this? You would use this on drum mixes, guitar tracks. I don't think this would be your go-to vocal EQ, but I suppose you could try it, depending. And again, it's about the music. It's about the engineering of sound. But this is a great EQ. It's not like your typical, if I were to just pull in my Neves here, that they don't do the same thing. They don't, these are band EQs, right? These are console EQs. They sound like console EQs. The Pultec is an outboard EQ for mastering and external processing. And so there's a difference in how they were used. Originally, again, the Pultec EQ was used for broadcasting, and so it's called for programs, entire programs, like an orchestra program or a broadcast program or an album program, mixing a whole album through one EQ. And it often was used like that, but you can use it on a lot of different things. And so I hope that this information was educational for you. I learned a lot looking into this. I mean, I've used this. I've always used my ears with the program EQs, but just in digging under the hood and, reading the documentation and some further explanations of digging around about what's going on under the hood here, I was very enlightened. So I hope that you were too. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate your comments and your shares and your likes. Yeah, thanks for hanging out and watching this. God bless.